just observing children is something very, very beautiful, and I always learn something from each and every child. There was an occasion once when a teacher came to me and said a particular child is not working. So I just went and sat in the room, and the sight was just amazing. She was wearing a long lehenga which had beautiful mirrors on it, and there was this shaft of sunlight coming into the room. And every time the child twirled, the mirrors on the, on her lehenga were reflected, and she was watching the prisms on the ceiling. I thought that was such a beautiful sight, and I'm sure it was a very indirect way of her learning about light, and which would probably mean a lot to her in the future.
Golden bead we did, color bead, bars we did, subtraction we did, a lot of things, stamp games also, and drama and playing. And then sometimes we had some acting time, like we could get to act or we could get to color. We have free play and all. Made rakis and paintings with our fingers, and we did some sticking with our fingers, dipping glue in a full hand. I enjoyed a lot. Our teachers were very nice. I used to like pre-primary a lot. The best thing about pre-primary was going downstairs and playing and doing work in extended session. I miss pre-primary.
Head Start has actually started its 30th year, and it's been such a pleasure working with children of different ages over the years. I think one of the wonderful things about the Montessori environment is that it's like a community. In life, we're all different ages, we're working together, we're interacting with each other, and that's exactly what happens in a Montessori environment. The pre-primary has children from 2.5 to 6 years old, and it's amazing how they get on, how they help each other, and work and share so much on a day-to-day basis.
We do not actually have a set of rules, but there are some unwritten rules in the environment which a 2.5-year-old who joins absorbs from the environment, because the older children are working constantly, and there are some of the 4.5-year-olds also who are working. In life we interact a lot with people of different ages. Some could be younger than us and some older than us. A Montessori environment is an ideal setup of the vertical group, which gives me an exposure as to how to interact with either age groups.
This actually helps the children work at their own pace. I mean, this is a term very commonly used in Montessori, in the Montessori community. Children are working at different levels, but there's no feeling of comparison or no loss of self-esteem, because each one is totally absorbed and involved.
We actually have an older child in my class who's, what she says the younger children receive so well, and she's able to communicate presentations and even get them to start working so well. I think the young ones so much relate to other children.
The elder children also have a great sense of responsibility towards the younger ones. I have to help them. So they really come forward and they ask, Auntie, can we take care of him in the playground today? They want to be responsible for the younger ones.
Parents today seem to have a lot of expectations, and when they put their children into schools, they expect a lot of things from those schools. It's almost like sometimes they feel like they expect some magic to come out of the school, come out of an institution. Are these expectations realistic? Do you think that, would you be able to connect this to Montessori's thoughts where she says that children learn at their own pace, children are differently able, and how can there be a common expectation for every single child?
An environment is created the same for all children. So what the child takes from the environment is also equally important. And it's not just about the number of hours the child spends at school, it's also what the child brings back from the home environment. Sometimes a presentation happens at a time when the child is perfectly prepared and it just goes so beautifully, but sometimes it does not. And I think the child might take a little longer, and once I think that he reaches that I think a gap that he feels with that material, then you'll see that the child just keeps taking that material and working. And when you suggest that maybe you can take something else, the child puts it away. To please us, they go and work with something else. And promptly after he winds that activity up, he'll go back to what he wants to do.
We know that there is a sensitive period to order or a sensitive period to language. Would you like to speak about one of those areas?
People who've not seen the Montessori setup actually wonder how is it that children actually maintain their environment. I mean, this is one thing that they always ask, right from winding up, starting the day and winding up, it's all done by children, and this I think is very hard for people to believe, but I think here the sensitive period for order comes in. It's the time when children are so keen that whatever they take from a place goes back to into its place, and the whole Montessori environment is set up, and the rules of the environment are such that we cater to this need of the child.
One of the concerns in parents' minds is that children of different ages, when they are put in the same room, there tends to be a little bit of teasing and bullying. How, as a Montessori adult, how would you sort of cope with that?
A lot of times I feel the children are able to manage beautifully. They do not need adult intervention. It's not that we do not keep an eye on children who tend to be aggressive. Generally, this aggression also stems from the fact that they are probably the only child. They are, given what they want when they ask for school. The concept of waiting. So they might take something from another child without waiting or asking the other child. Those are the kinds of things that we generally see. We may not correct the child at that moment, but we do call the child aside. If we notice that kind of behavior, we do tend to correct the child privately. And also, if there's something that goes out of hand, it's not that we are not aware of it. We immediately intervene. But there are things that we feel that the child needs to learn to handle on his own. So that is when we take a step back, we observe. And if the child shows that it's reaching an amicable solution, which it generally does, we don't intervene.
Let just the child be for some time, because the child actually needs that time and the space to actually learn to talk, learn to be with everyone. But then children are very, very adaptable. They do learn to do all these things, and we need to put our mind at rest. The child will grow, and it's beautiful to see that growth. And you need to be patient. I think that is one virtue as an adult we need to learn.
This discussion you've been having on respect for the child, I fully agree with. But I sometimes think that parents sort of misunderstand this concept of respect for the child. They associate it more to protect the child more than is necessary. How would you sort of ensure that this communication is on the right track, and where they don't confuse respect with protection?
I think it's important for all of us as parents to respect our children as unique individuals. And once again, I would say it's the anxiety to mother a child or to take over and solve his or her problems that comes in the way. If you see two children arguing, one little girl may tell another one, "I'm not your friend." And after 5 minutes, they're holding hands and walking off together. It's like, they've already settled it. But sometimes when there's adult interference or the adult wants to solve the problem for the child, it only becomes more complex.
If he does not want to, communicate or interact with other children, there's no point pushing. Like in my class, I will try to encourage him to talk to others, but I know if I push too much, he's going to retract back into the shell, which I don't want. So I will try putting him in, with others in group activities, maybe to slowly start talking or communicating.
Every situation they face, if as an adult we just encroach and prevent them from thinking through it and reacting, I think that's where we are overprotected.
Actually, if you look at it, they know that they have to respect their friends, and there could be a third child who will come and say, no, you can't say that to our friend, no, come on, let's patch it up. So,
Yeah, I think as adults we tend to bear grudges and harbor them, but children, by virtue of being so innocent and open and loving, they overcome these obstacles so naturally, and I think it's important to let them be themselves and handle things themselves. As human beings, we're all sensitive beings. This does not mean sensitive in a negative way, but we actually are what we feel and what we relate to and the different sensations we are exposed to even as little babies, how our mothers may have held us in their arms, they've given us warmth and comfort. And gradually those senses lead us into higher learning because we already feel that connection with everything around us. Little children in particular, you can see they feel with their whole being, their whole body, their emotions. They can't be separated that physically I'm doing something or mentally I'm doing something or emotionally. It's like a total involvement which puts them into contact with the world around them.
sensitive periods are the cornerstone for us in Montessori at least. If we miss out on that time, then the presentation could lose its essence, or the connect that the child can draw with the material could be missed out. So it's important, as Nadila spoke earlier, that I know when the child is sensitive to a certain presentation and when he or she is ready for a presentation, and present that concept to the child.
What I've observed over the years is that work ethic is something that is built at a very young age. In fact, it's almost being formed when a child actually walks into an environment for the very first time. That child is striking or forming a relationship with a teacher, and the way that relationship is formed is very important because that's something that lasts a lifetime. How would you, would be your take on this?
From the time the child comes in to the classroom, he's watching children around him work. Even though this child may be a new child, he's getting influenced by the patterns of work of the other children. Some children do take a little while to get into the work pattern, but eventually they do see and they learn. The cycle of work for each child is different, and this kind of Montessori environment helps accommodate that as well. Because one child may want to repeat a particular activity much longer and till the inner urge is satisfied, and another child may quickly want to move on to the next. Work ethics in terms of ability to work, the nature of work that you want to do, working in concentration and learning and subsequently mastery, all this is what forms the work ethics of the child, and I think the environment beautifully lets each of this take place.
Once in a while, a child may have a certain aggression or a certain anger, which is in a way a deterrent to his or her own development within the group. How would you handle that?
Well, initially I would see how best I can reach out to the child also, and how my environment would help him calm down in terms of the aggression. As it was rightly said, we do share it with the parent that yes, there is a phase that the child is going through. We would like to know is there something happening at the home front which could be a reason. You never know. Sometimes parents do share that yes, there is a lot of change in the home environment.
I think it's important that we learn how to help the child settle down within the environment, not remove him from the environment.
Ritika, could you tell me as a mother how you would react if a school sort of brought you brought you into a PTM and told you something that, talked a little bit about where your child is sort of going wrong in a certain way? How would you react to that as a parent more than as a Montessori?
So I think as a parent, what I'm looking at is that my child is understood. We want to understand the child as much as he's understood at home. So I think the feedback that a Head Start adult is giving the parent is to help the child. I mean, ultimately we have the child's interest in mind, and there's consistency in school and at home. A positive interaction between the adult and the parent, being able to understand what each other is saying in a positive way, I think will help the child best.
Working with children is always like a relationship, and we really can't work in isolation. It's, the child, the teacher, the home, they're all like links of a chain which move together in synchronicity, and if even one link is out of gear, then the chain doesn't move smoothly.